Hi, everybody. Today's product council session is all around the G2P Connect and the MOSIP routing workstream, which is being led by Paul Baker with support from Sam. Before we get into that, James Bush, our engineering director, told me that he'd like to make a statement stroke announcement. So over to you, James.
Oh, sorry, Paul. It's more of a question actually for the product council. During the backlog grooming session for the vNext work stream, yesterday, in fact, we came upon a question, an issue that I think the vNext workstream contributors would like the product council's opinion on. It's to do with two-factor authentication on the administration portals and participant portals. I'm going to post a link to the ZenHub ticket in the meeting chat. It's there, but I will also share my screen if you bear with me a second. I'll try to keep this quick. I know we've got quite a focused session today. Find the right link to share. Yeah, I hope you can see a ZenHub ticket titled two-factor authentication for the portal. So thanks to the guys at BitsofWorks who created this ticket. So there is a ticket to enable two-factor authentication for the portals in vNext product. Now, the vNext product was presented by the development team with something they call a built-in identity management service provider. Forgive me if I got the terminology wrong, but it's a basic cut-down implementation of the role-based access control modules that doesn't support 2FA. So my question to the product council is that there's a few questions really. Should MOSIP portals always have two-factor authentication enabled? When you do a default install, should the defaults be that two-factor authentication is always enabled? If not, do we want to provide an option to the community and the adopters of MOSIP that doesn't support two-factor authentication? Do we want to maybe necessarily extend the existing built-in implementation to support 2FA? That would mean us building our own 2FA implementation. Or should we limit the vNext installation options to include identity management systems that do support 2FA and that enable us to require it by default and require some kind of active choice, a decision by an administrator of the system to disable that on a per account or per scheme basis? So I'm interested in hearing any opinions around the room, so I can give that feedback to the vNext workstream.
Am I allowed to make a comment here?
Anyone can, as far as I'm concerned, Paul.
Okay, well, 2FA is kind of industry standard for a financial platform. If you wanted to be more cautious about it, then any role which has any ability to change a setting should require 2FA. So in my testing of the vNext beta, for example, I have created some users which are purely read-only. So they can possibly generate reports, they can have a look at transactions, but they can't make any changes. And those I wouldn't be too worried about having 2FA enabled. though there is always the risk of information leakage into other roles. But I think
Thank
that
you.
allows me to actually set a
Thank you so
parameter.
much.
I think does need 2FA.
Okay. Anybody else wish to share their opinion? I think the default options that we have for the vNow release, the current Major League release, does fully support 2FA with the gateway deployment that is kind of off the shelf. So it would be a regressive step, I think, to enable somebody to do an off-the-shelf deployment of the official Major League release without 2FA capability. Does anybody disagree with that? I think that's probably an easy way of putting the question.
I mean, I even have 2FA on my bank accounts, so I don't understand why this is even an issue.
Yeah, I know. I'm asking the question here because Major League development is a community.
Yeah, no.
And everybody needs to have a chance to share their opinions. And what was presented was a certain way, and before we make changes on that, it's important to hear everybody's opinions.
Paul.
Yeah, I think I don't know if we need 2FA deployed configured by default, because a lot of people use the deployments for testing and for validation. But if it's a production deployment, absolutely. And I would say you need 2FA on all accounts.
I would certainly agree with that, Paul. You don't need it on test deployments.
Okay, so
Unless you're testing the 2FA, of course.
I see a potential danger with that, though.
Yeah.
For inexperienced deployers, there might just not be awareness of the fact that there is 2FA that can be enabled, or that they should be doing that in production. How do we make sure that nobody uses Mojaloop in production without 2FA? So my thoughts were, if it's enabled by default, you can always turn it off for testing, but it's less risky than the other way around, requiring someone to turn it on for production.
I think the right people need to take on the responsibilities for the security, and we can't change that, and affecting the default settings doesn't affect it either.
But there is something to be said for having sensible defaults for all configurations, right?
Yeah.
Secure by default is one of the principles that we try to live by.
I'm thinking of the demo version, the quick deploy, show that it's working, tear down version. I don't know if that needs 2FA, but maybe it does. But certainly anything more serious than that absolutely does.
Yeah, I disagree, Paul. Fail safe. Fail safe.
Fail safe, yeah. Require conscious action to disable it rather than require conscious action to enable it, yeah?
Correct. I know that for most of us on this call, we think about it as developers, and I totally understand why we would like that to be easy. But I think fail safe has to be the default.
Yeah, good idea.
Because otherwise you don't know that it's actually working until you put it into a situation where you try to switch it on and discover it's not. And you can work around it. You can do automated testings around two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. I would also like to just point out two other things. The IAM stack that was chosen through earlier design decisions is Ori and Keycloak. Both of those have been vetted as the appropriate ways to do it. We should definitely not assume or waste community time building out any IAM solutions or baking in other things. Part of the reason those were chosen is because they provided an API and access that would allow the replacement of other services or integration with federated IAMs in existing organizations should they be encountered. So I think those are very important things not to be lost. in the
Okay. Yeah.
journey we're on. Yeah.
Thanks for that, guys. Just one question. I wasn't around at the time in the Mojo Loop community when the Keycloak and Ori decision was made. Was that, I assume that was part of the BizOps portal and API development workstream, I think. Was that taken to the DA and discussed at the DA?
I'm going to say yes, but I know there were some challenges at the time during some of those conversations. That was definitely became part of the solution during the business operations framework. And it was actually, we were recommended that by Google and COIL representatives on the TGB as a sensible approach. And then people went off and did assessments and came back, and it was done that way.
Understood. Okay, so does anybody want to say anything else before I sum up? I'm conscious I'm taking up time here.
I was on the DA call when it was presented. I would say yes, it was presented to the DA. Whether all members of the DA agreed, I can't remember, but I suspect it wasn't unanimous agreement on the way forward. But it was definitely discussed and agreed that it could proceed and be built out that way. The BOF was built, and communicated with the DA at multiple times during the process of being built.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I suspected so. I suppose we could go back through the minutes of those meetings if needed. But the BOF, as implemented with Keycloak and the Ori stack, was subsequently adopted by the community and the foundation, right? So that's a pretty good data point there. So in summary, then, what I'm hearing is that as a community, we think we shouldn't invest in building our own functionality to do this, and that we should use the same off-the-shelf open source stack that supports 2FA that's currently in use for the BOF.
Makes sense.
If anybody disagrees with that, we don't have to have a full discussion about it now, but if anybody disagrees with that, even if you don't say it now on this call, please reach out to me, and I will do whatever necessary to continue the discussion beyond this point.
Also, James, thank you for that summary. I have one last point to put in that mix, that obviously that whole stack and that is supported in the IAC, so it should be very easy for future adopters, and things like VNex that should plug into it and be extending on the IAC for deployments should be able to fit in and use that all very easily.
Understood. Yeah, thanks for that, Warren. Okay, thanks, Paul. Please reach out to me, anybody, if you have any further discussion on that you want to have with me. Otherwise, back to you, Paul.
Hi,
Julia,
can I
are you
just
trying to say something?
yeah, can I just make a comment, perhaps perhaps in the future, would that be possible to be presented a pro and cons analysis when we are being asked to wait on a potential design?
So, sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. So I'm just asking, perhaps in the future, would that be possible to be presented a pros and cons analysis of each option when we are being asked to potentially comment on any new features and so on?
Yeah, but my pushback against that would be that the person presenting the pros and cons can present their own view of the pros and cons, and they might not necessarily be all the pros and cons, and that I think it's up to each individual member of the product council or the DA to make their own assessment, rather than just, look at some pre-canned list of pros and cons and make a decision based on that.
Well, I think this is also the opportunity to see if you're thinking of everything, right?
Yeah.
And then potentially it's an opportunity to add more and on the call as well. I don't know, just a suggestion perhaps for the future.
Yeah, okay, I'll take the suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. I think it's a perfectly reasonable suggestion, and we should take it on board. Thank you. James, are you finished?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would you mind stopping sharing your screen, please?
Yes, apologies. I forgot I was even sharing.
Okay, thanks, James. Okay, back to the subject of today's product council, which is the G2P Connect MOSIP routing workstream. So over to you, James. Sorry, Paul.
Okay, hi guys. So we gave an update not so long ago at the mid-PI review. So this is just really an extension of that update of what's changed since then. And it might be worth just going through what the new design looks like, because I'm not sure we spent enough time on that. Okay, so let me just start off with where we are right now. Can you see my screen? Is it the MOSIP integration?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, good. I'm always concerned that I start sharing other screens. Okay, so this is where we are. We've got an epic of the work, which is here. Here's our epic. We've got a whole lot of details and a whole lot of linked stories. So please follow closely if you are interested. Really, there's 4 steps involved in delivering on this work stream, this PI. That's the design, which has been complete, and the second one is building this payment token adapter. So we are 90% done there. We've got, in fact, it's quite a few of you guys have worked with Elijah. He's helping us out on this work stream at the moment. So let me show you his story. It's quite well defined and it's not quite completed, but there are lots of ticks. So very happy with the progress and the engineering that's been done on this task. So we are, I really do believe that's a good assumption. We are 90% there. At the moment, we also then need to build this centralized beneficiary registration portal. And we are sort of negotiating with community members at the moment. We haven't come to a final agreement, and there are reasons for that, mainly because we're a bit busy and distracted on other things. But I am it's an advanced stage, and I think we will come to an agreement within the next week or so. And that let me show you on the design documents as to what that is. Okay, sorry. Here's our design. So the design's in the Mojaloop repository, and it's a centralized component which does the negotiation with each of the members involved. So we have really completed all the associated components, and really it's around building this centralized system that really sort of connects them all together and finishes up that functionality.
Paul,
Yeah.
could I possibly ask you to make that diagram a bit bigger? I don't know about other people, but I'm struggling to see.
Okay, let me click on it and zoom in. How's that?
It's much better, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So
Can I just say a couple of words, Paul?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's important that Product Council understands that this is all about ultimately support for G2P payments of one form or another.
Oh, yes.
And this is managed through, as you see at the top, a beneficiary management system. This is where people, where somebody who wants to manage a social payment of whatever form might create a potential list of a registration list of people who may or may not be eligible for some form of social payment. And within that platform as well, the BMS, that's where you design your social payment scheme. So effectively, if a person meets criteria A, B, and C, then they should be paid $10 per week, whatever it may be. And from that beneficiary management system, you can not only create payments lists, but also you manage the process of identifying the individuals and identifying the ultimately how the payment should be routed to them. So, and that's the purpose of the beneficiary registration portal that Paul has been talking about below, which provides that association between an individual, the MOSIP digital identity, and the DFSP account. So that's all I wanted to say, Paul. So back to you.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I think it's worth talking through the design because I really do think it's quite we've iterated on this so many times, and
Yeah.
I think it's converged on something that's really neat. And in fact, I think it's a little more than what you say, Paul.
I think it is. Yes.
Because it is, yes, a portal that goes that's run through the beneficiary management system, but it's also becoming sort of a way of managing an alias, a payment token alias, in a way that each individual user can control their own token. So let me talk through the design quickly and describe each point sort of step by step, and then I'll finish off and describe why I think it also extends into the alias. So let me, if you look at this design, a user who wants to receive beneficiary payment system will go to a beneficiary management system and then be required to log in and set up their account details. Now, there are various types of beneficiary management systems that you can provide, and some types require sort of and the different types require a different level of authentication or checking on the KYC data. And let me explain that. Let's say you were distributing funds for an emergency relief. If that was happening and the person that you were going to distribute the funds to wanted to send their money to their sister's account because that's the only account they could get money from, you wouldn't mind. You know, you would be quite happy to do that. But if you were distributing funds as a social payment scheme, then you would absolutely want to make sure that those funds are going to the person who is in front of you and registering, identifying themselves. So this allows you to do both of those. So what happens is the beneficiary management system gets registered against this portal and dictates the level of KYC checking that needs to be done for that particular token. So that's the first step that needs to happen. So the user comes in, goes to their portal, needs to log on. We get a redirect to the centralized beneficiary management system, which immediately redirects to MOSIP. So the login is a MOSIP login, and that's how we identify the user. So this beneficiary central beneficiary registration portal is in fact a MOSIP partner. So they're registered as a MOSIP partner and they obtain a unique partner reference for that person. So they can always identify that same person who's logged in. And then against that person, they will check to see if they've got a token that's already registered. If there isn't, they will allow them to select a new one. And the way that we now linking it to ModuLoop is we mapping that token that's going to be generated and held by the system that meets the requirements as given by the government agency system. That token will be mapped to an existing alias token inside the ModuLoop system that might be based on account or some other information. Essentially, we're layering tokens on top of each other. So we're creating this alias token, which then can let's say make payments using your MSISDN addressing. So we're linking then that person's payment sort of government beneficiary registration payment token to their MSISDN number, if that is what they choose. So in step number 4, after they've logged in, they then check the mapping of that alias token that they would like to use, and then we then do a discovery call into ModuLoop. Now, ModuLoop has got ways of providing KYC data based on how the scheme has been set up. Minimum, we return the user's name, but we could return other information. So this really builds on top of that infrastructure that's already defined inside ModuLoop. So that get parties call goes to the alias, which goes to the Oracle, which gets then redirected to the DFSP, and then we check to see if that account exists, and we get some information about that account holder, which is then returned back into the system. The beneficiary management portal then does a check. And this check is the one that is defined for based on the government management system that's connected to the system. And let's say that check says the names need to match. So the first thing it receives the names from ModuLoop, and then it can make a subsequent call to the MOSIP backend and retrieve KYC data based on the results on the token it received from this login flow from MOSIP. And then it can check to make sure that KYC data is in fact matching as per requirements from the government agency system. It can then store the results of that, and not necessarily the KYC data, and then register and create a token. And that token, to register it, it needs to update the ModuLoop scheme, and it needs to update the payee. And over here we built a sort of adaptable component that sits between the backend system and the SDK, which can do this mapping between the payment token and the backend token that we already have built integrations for. So updating this token. In the future, I imagine that we might want to extend the ModuLoop payment scheme to manage this mapping, but it would be nice to have some functionality working now, which is why we have built this token. But I think long-term in the future, I'm hoping the need for a token would disappear and we could manage it centrally. But that step is required to make it work in this use case at the moment. So after we registered in ModuLoop and we registered the token at the DFSP, which we do know about because of the get parties call, we then return that payment token back to the beneficiary management system, and then they can use that payment token now to link it to that account and the beneficiary payment. Any subsequent payment in the ModuLoop system using any of the defined use cases, and they can now be called using that payment token, because the alias Oracle has been configured with that payment token, and it'll redirect to the payer DFSP. And when you make a call to the payer DFSP, this payment token adapter will interpret that alias token and then map it to the correct backend token system. if a token isn't correctly registered in the system, it will return an error saying that those accounts are not configured. Was that a good summary, Paul? And was that worthwhile?
That was a good summary. Before we move on, does anyone have any questions on that sequence? Because it's not straightforward. I mean, okay, we've been through it 100 times, but still. Everyone happy with that? Okay, good. So, Paul, please carry on.
So the reason why I think it's now becoming an alias, because in the community, we've been talking about building a payment token alias. And what we mean by that is we want a place where people can change where their money moves to, or gets based on without needing to go to all participants concerned and get their information changed. So it gives them sort of ability to move between banks or banking institutions if they so wish. So so how do you do that? You need to be able to trust the individual themselves. You need to be able to know that they are the only ones who can affect that. Otherwise, it becomes a fraud issue. And that's where we're using MOSIP. We're using MOSIP to really generate that unique login into the system that then identifies the user. So we've got this other dotted arrow where the beneficiary person can then subsequently go back to that token, log in through another mechanism, and redirect that payment to another token, provided the same set of lists of checks that the beneficiary management system provided are met, and the MOSIP KYC data matches with the MOSIP KYC data provided, then we provide that flexibility. Yet we still got the controls in place. So that's why I'm saying it's starting to look like a payment token alias. If we extend this to, let's say, I think that's out of the scope of this project. But anyway, this could be extended to other alias ideas for organizations as well, which would go through a different flow process of identification. But it would be lovely to be able to, if you have a company, to be able to have people pay you into that company name because you registered it centrally. And that could be mapped then to where your account actually resides, and it might help reduce the number of incorrect payments out there.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that people need to understand. Although this workstream title talks about MOSIP, the fact that it's MOSIP is really not that important, except for certain constraints about the privacy preserving nature of MOSIP, which have made this more difficult. But the net result is a flexible routing mechanism that can support pretty much any form of token, I would say. So it has significant value beyond MOSIP itself. So
yeah, that's why I think we should consider adding support for this sort of alias mapping of tokens inside the merge loop switch itself.
Yeah.
Okay, back to progress where we are. So we at an advanced stage in sort of negotiating this work to get done. It is a key part of the whole delivery, but it is also limited in actually, I don't want to say it's limited in complexity. What I'm saying is it feels like a doable chunk of work that can be achieved before the convening. Obviously, we need to validate that is possible still, because we haven't completed negotiating this. But certainly hope that we can complete that. And then the final step would be to put them all together to have a demonstration ready for the convening. Yeah, but I don't think I've got too much more to say.
Yes, Warren had asked a question,
Oh, okay.
chat, and then he promptly dropped off. So
Okay.
I was about to ask him to speak.
Can we get that description added to the functionality as a feature?
I think it was round about the time we were talking about the ability to route to other functionalities, not limited to MOSIP. I think that's what he was talking to about. I wanted him to clarify.
Okay.
Just message him and ask him for clarity on that point.
Well, certainly the parts that we are building, we're trying to do it in a way that can be reused.
Yeah.
So certainly this payment token adapter is a reusable component, but and I'm hoping that at some point we can extend Moduloop to avoid that completely. This will be in the OSS, this redirect and login functionality to MOSIP. So minimum, it can be used as a reference for other projects who also need to perform that login script. But it is very straightforward. It uses an OpenID Connect flow, which is a standard way of integrating to an IAM solution. But just to see it working, I guess, would be good.
Okay. So what do you think the chances are of us being able to see a demo by the time of the convening?
I'm still hopeful, but it's not all up to me. We are doing this work in the community, so
yeah, I understand that. Is there anybody? I was just looking through the list. Is there anyone on the call who's been working on this apart from you, Paul?
I
don't think there is. No.
Yeah, I didn't invite Elijah. I should have, but
Sam's been part of the work stream, hasn't he, as well?
Yeah.
Sam's been part of the work stream, and Elijah, and I've had quite a few people review the design and help sort of refine this design. Wait, where is sorry, it is right here. If we go back,
Sam, make any comments on that?
Hey, Paul.
Sam.
Hi, Paul. Yes.
Did you want to make any comments on that?
On the timeline or something else?
Timeline in particular.
I think, I mean, based on the work that I'm seeing with the token adapter service, it's going well.
Yeah.
But I think there was something else that Paul was pursuing through other partners in the community that has some admin issues to that. So I'm not sure that how those are going. But otherwise, I'm very optimistic that we'll see something at the convening.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Thank you. I've just had a response from Warren, actually, because I pinged him to find out what he meant. And his comment is that you are both sharing the future value and general applicability of this work. I was hoping that would be captured as a North Star product functionality, that this was the first step towards. And this is recorded as product rather than engineering design. No, I'd fully agree with that, and I think that's what both Paul and I were trying to say. So yes, we need to capture that elsewhere, I think, and I'll probably do that within initially at least the product roadmap. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else want to make any comments? No. Paul, is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, that's all for me.
Okay, good. Well, I really hope that we can see some form of demo at the convening. I look forward to that. But in the meantime, thank you very much for your efforts today, Paul. And it's a good session. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant.
Goodbye, everyone. Until next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.